We have panelists today that have done their ancestral villages and beyond, and we will discuss what they did, how they did it, and what they have learned along the way. So first, let me introduce them. Our panels are Stelios Chagias and Dimitris Katsampis, and they are associated with the Tribal Pages website, Family Trees of Southern Parnan, which was started in 2002 and currently contains 45,690 people and growing all the time. I've been a big fan for a long time. Then we have Tom Frangoulis, who's been working since 2010 on a family tree associated with the village in Lefkada. We have Chris Zervas, who started his research in the village of Prosimna Argolidis and has expanded to surrounding villages. His tree is currently approaching 65,000 people. And then we have Carol Kostakos Petranek, and she's been focused on Ioannis, Sparta. That's where all three of her grandparents came from. And one of my grandparents came from there also. So I have now joined her to work on this project. So let me start with the family trees of Southern Parnan. Now, Dimitris, I understand you were the one that started this project. Is that true? Back in around 2002?
It was a joint effort in essence, all around. Let me just say that I didn't set out to be involved in a project of this magnitude. That was never the intention. I was more interested in documenting the history of my ancestral village and publishing a small booklet. It seems to be a tradition in Greece that teachers do quite a bit of research wherever they go. And a lot of local histories are written by teachers.
I've noticed that.
Yes. Well, I was born in Karitsa and left as a very young boy. I returned much later and felt a spiritual connection with the place, a revelation. So I did a fair bit of research. And as I say, the intention was never to branch into family trees. I was more interested in researching and documenting how my folk, my ancestors eked out a living in, at times, a hostile environment, a very, very difficult environment. I wanted to research education in the area and the development of the community over time. Some of that led on to clans, and as Carol pointed out in an earlier session, one of the first important records was post-liberation. After the revolution of 1821, we find that the village was peopled by no more than 20 families.
Wow.
And we began documenting the clans, actually, and that led to branch it out into charting family trees. We initially wrote out a description of the clans, and that is published online bilingually. At about that time, which is early 2000s, I joined up with Stelios. So I had charted around 100 family members, and that was basically my main input until Stelios came on board, and then we began to fly. Here was a person that a chemist background, but he had an incredible ability that I didn't, to visualize patterns and to put together data that seemed to be random and by chance and make some sense of that in terms of family trees. Now, I don't want to steal his thunder. he has been the single most important driving force of family trees, first of Gorica and then extending to southern Panon. So thank you, Stelios, for your efforts.
Thank you. Yeah,
No, go on. Go on.
no, I before 2002, I was humming and hawing about doing just my immediate family, my mother and my father, but I never got around to it. That would have been taken 5 or 6 years. And I come to Dimitris' house and I said, I need some help because I didn't know how to go about it. And he shows me the website tribal pages, and it just went from there. And I said I needed to start interviewing. And that's when, actually from no knowledge about anything. So luckily there were enough elderly people here in Adelaide that we could make a start. And most of the people I did interview would have been late 80s, 90s, and most of them I would have interviewed 20, 30 times. So this is about 3 or 4 of the, because not all the people can help you. You have to be a special kind of person with a special kind of memory, and their recall is such that they're a great use. And at the time I had a voice recorder, and they were on a little tape deck, and it didn't take a lot, but as time went on, the voice recorders got better, and that's how it started. And from 2002, we started getting other members. We got John from Athens. These are people with a Gorica connection. John was a computer programmer for Olympic, and he had his own family tree, and I put it onto the database. I think he may have done it as well because he's proficient at English. And John is the person who went to Gorica, and I can't remember if it was off his own bat, but he started searching for church records. This would have been 2004, 2005, and he managed to find school records that were unfortunately just found on the ground, littering the place. No care had been taken. We were lucky to find church records from 1860 that were in good condition, but they had been just discarded.
They were not sorted.
They were just
all over the place.
All over the place, and you wouldn't know what was what. Anyway, he was very methodical, was John. And after that, the first few years, we actually got Gregory. He came on as a very young man in 2009 or something. He would have been 15.
Wow.
So, and Gregory is, as you know, he's from Yeraki in Laconia. And by this time we realized that we couldn't call it Gorica family trees anymore, because you can't study one village parochially. It has to be connected with the surrounding villages, and that's when we gave it the name.
Initially we thought that it was going to be not as a daunting task, because we thought, oh, small village, we're all pretty much related, but geez, in very short time, the interconnectedness of people, the humanity of people, the tentacles of it, if I can call it that, reached the world over. The United States, South Africa, Britain, all over. So this tiny village in the slopes of the mountain had a real and living connections with the rest of the world, which we kind of suspected, but we did not think it was at the magnitude that it became. The internet was such an important factor in all of this, because by the 2000s, the internet, both as an entertainment and data source, was common every day. The internet has been with us for more than a generation now. It seems like yesterday, but
It does, doesn't it?
I guess for some of us, family trees and of Southern Parnan that Stelios worked on had three very, very important factors that suited all of us and most team players. One was that we could enter families and develop relationships very, very clear, develop charts of kinship. The other one was of particular love of mine was that you had the ability to write stories, family stories and anecdotes. From my view, from my background, anecdotes say so much about the people, the way they lived, what was important to them, their spiritual life, their struggle for survival. And another key element was photographs. Photographs say so much, more than 1,000 words, they say. Right. And the collection of rare photographs was something that we were on about from the beginning, which has proved to be, a great learning for all of us. And to the extent that that feeling is permeated to the whole village. The whole village now is sending us photographs.
See, that's very interesting. You've got them all involved in this now. That's
so it's not just
right. That's great.
Another method of information gathering that you haven't mentioned, I actually started writing a cover letter on an industrial scale. This would have been when there was not much information on the internet. So I would have had hundreds of letters. And because our village has got surnames that are unique, you can't do it with a more common name like in English you'd have Smith and that. But the ones that you know that it's say from Ayuyani, but from our case, Garitza, I would do everybody in America with that name. And I would send them. And if I got 2 replies out of 10, that would be a gold mine. That for me.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So,
Carol, keep that in mind.
So that was one I thought up myself. And I've still got all the letters that they sent me back. And it gave me a connection. And they sent me later the email addresses and things like that.
That's wonderful. So now people can actually go to the tree by what? Searching on Google, they can go in and search for tribal pages and then what? Parnan?
If they say family trees of Southern Parnan, it comes up.
Okay. And we'll publish.
There is a little bit of a trick to it, Georgia, that we need to reveal. Most of these trees have passwords to get into. Both Stelios and I do not see the family tree of Southern Parnan as something private. We see it as public property, and we freely pass on the access code, which is PARNON, quite obviously.
Just the name of the mountain.
Oh, that's secret. Okay, we won't let that out.
That's a big secret.
That's a secret.
So how many people actually belong to your group, your tree?
Our group,
membership.
Our team is a very numerous, many. We see that the whole process we see as a journey, and a beautiful journey. We're on a train.
Over time, there would be about what we call co-coordinators, about 6.
Yes.
Some of them are pretty busy people. There might be a lawyer or something like that, and they can't. But whenever they can, they send information, and in a lot of cases they enter it themselves because they got the password to actually edit, and so they can get in.
You're the coordinator. There are some key people that enter. But
they don't have to tell me, but sometimes they do. But But
there are many more contributors that we rely on. There are some people that are not computer literate, whose contribution in the team has been so invaluable. There was the 90-year-old lady that came to live in Adelaide and spent incredible amount of time. That
was my first big interview, yeah.
Yes. There's the Agrophylakas of the village. He was in that job for 40 years, knows the area better than anyone else, and including people. His great delight is to get a telephone call from Stelios or I to check a church record, and he will say, by tomorrow, you will have it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a team. It's like a train journey. There are people that get on and people that get off. There are people that get off and sometimes come back on again. We value
I'll just say very quickly, there are people who have also done you don't see them on the internet, but they have done them, like the history of, in the Chinouria, which is northern Laconia in Arcadia, the former finance minister of Greece, Frangoulis, he sent me his family tree, and I have actually entered it because it connects very well with Ieraki, with Karitsa, with all those villages on the slope of Parna. As we go towards Leonidi, we've got Tsitalia. There's another bloke there, Yanis Sari. He has, together we have documented just about the whole Saris, which is the largest family name that I know of. It's over 1,000 people. Even down in, there were people in Adelaide that I coordinated with to do, say, Wuves, Apidia, Ayo Dimitri, but you don't see them on the internet. And one big one is in Sydney. There's a man, Tom Kokoris. He's from Rihia. He has got about 45,000 names. He doesn't go on the internet, but he has got, it's a private, but he freely shares information with me. And there's quite a number of people in that range of, but we don't know about.
Sharing is so important.
It is. There's a dominant ideology of the site, by the way.
And that's how it built. These people have given me the information.
That's great. It's very impressive. It really is. Thank you very much. This has been great.
Sharing it, and our pleasure to meet so many people and learn so much from people like Tom and Chris and you, Georgia, and meeting you, though virtually, and Carol. It's always been a kind of goal of ours to meet Carol. She's done.
She's famous.
Well, she's famous.
So it's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next let's go to Tom Frangoulis, my DNA
everybody.
cousin.
Okay, Georgia, Carol, and Gregory, thank you very much. I hope everybody appreciates what you guys are doing. I hope they understand that it is not a 5-minute job. It is a commitment, and the commitment takes a lot of time. We appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Georgia.
No, thank you.
Okay.
So tell us about your project and some of the unexpected things you found along the way.
Okay. I was born in a small village in the island of Lefkas. It is called Eglouvi, 1945. I left Greece 1964, and I came to California to go to school. In about 2010, I got very embarrassed because I could not remember my grandmother's name. So that's how it started. That's how it started, and it has reached the point that where I am right now. In the beginning, I start collecting information that I had around the house, different pictures from old pictures, wedding certificates, marriage certificates, baptisms, and I found a shoebox. Inside the shoebox, there were the original letters that my father had sent me. Again, my father passed away in 1975, so I had kept inside the shoebox his letters, the letters from my friends, and inside my father's letters that I've read again and again and again, there were certain important papers from the army, because I didn't go to the army. There were important papers, but at the bottom of the shoebox, I had my original tickets from Piraeus to New York. Please, from Piraeus to New York, and by Queen Frederica, and I had the original ticket from Greyhound that I took from New York to San Francisco. Now, the trip took about, I don't know how many days, but it was a long trip. Just the bus was, but it was important for me to see that these papers were still there.
Yes.
I go to Greece and visit my cousin. She's married to my cousin that had passed away. And before I left, she says, "By the way, I have a box that I'm going to throw away." I said, "Don't throw it away. Just give it to me." Now, inside that box, there were important family papers, passports, taftotites, ID cards, driver licenses, and there was, among other things, there was an envelope full of old pictures.
Oh,
One of those
dream come
pictures.
true.
One of those pictures was the picture of my grandfather, and I do believe that this is the only picture that exists of my grandfather.
Wow.
Now, I got to Eglouvi about 5 years ago, and I go visit my cousin. He's a second cousin of mine, Andreas Frangoulis. He told me that his father left a chest in the basement of the house, and I go to visit him, and I go down to the basement. I open the chest, and the chest, believe me, it's full of newspapers, full of books, full of loose papers, full of notepads. Some of those loose papers that he has, it's poems. He was the secretary of the village for many years, and at the same time he's a poet. He had written a lot of poems that they were published, but some of them were not published at all. Anyway, in one of those note pads that I saw, it was full of history about the village. And the history had to do with the people that they lived there, the number of people that they were every year, how many men, how many women. It was very, very interesting. But what was more important to me was a notebook that had just five pages. That's all. That's all he had written. But believe me, in those 5 pages, he had the whole history of, now he's my uncle. He's he's the first cousin of my father. So his family is my family. But he has in 5 pages, he has all the information about the family. And the family goes back to something 1750, 1770, 1780. That's how much information he had. But everything was written with nicknames. I mean, he called somebody Kokolo. Okay, it took me years to realize that Kokolos is Nicholas in Greece. It took me years to find out he's referring to somebody as Skorpios Frangoulis. It took me years to realize who's Skorpios. I mean, what name is this? Anyway, the thing is full of information. And I told Carol earlier that there were some unwanted gifts from unwanted visitors, that they were chewing all this information that that was there. By the way, those poems, I took them, I worked on them, I spent 3 years. We published a book, and the proceeds from the book go to a museum that they are trying to build in the village in Eglouvi. So something really happened over there. In about 4 years ago, the priest of the church in Eglouvi and the person who was taking care of the church, they let me go into the church and look at the chest at the bookcase that they had. The bookcase again, had a lot of visitors, but it was full of books, old books, mass books, church books, and one of them, the date is 1691.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, the date on that book. I don't know if how the word is. It is called Minea, and what it is. I guess the churches were buying books every month, and they had a mass for every day. That was Minea, and they were for January this year, February, March, April, May. So they were every month there was a separate book, and this one particular book, as I said, was 1691. Now inside there were a lot of loose papers. Some of those papers were to me very, 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 very important. They had lists of the parishioners, lists of the properties that the church had. But in one paper, it is an old book. Just a paper from one old book. But that paper was very important because in that paper was the baptisms of that particular year, and one of the baptisms was my father's baptism.
Oh, wow.
I'm holding on my hand the baptism of my father in 1906. Now I will go a step further, which is much more difficult to believe and understand. In another piece of paper, there are seven wedding certificates or wedding entries written in both sides of the paper. I've read them. It is the wedding entry of my great-grandfather in 1853. Now try to understand how much information that piece of paper, and again, it's one paper for the whole book, how much information that piece of paper gave me, but not only information, it's proof. I know that his name was Anastasios. I know that he got married at Anastasia Frangoulis Koga. I know her father and her grandfather because the wedding took place at their house. So there is way too much information that it was there. Now, why do I say that? I hope that we look at the chests and we don't throw them away. And I hope we look and keep what is important.
No, that's
again,
wonderful.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh my gosh. So when did you start building this into a tree? All this information?
I started in 2010.
And do you have that tree? Is it online somewhere or is it something you just have?
The tree has taken a life of its own because right now I have my family tree going back to 1700 to 1690 or something. I have proof, weddings and marriages and all that going back. But I have expanded to the family trees of all the villages and all the people in the family in the village.
So if somebody wanted to, do you have a list that you can publish or give of like all the surnames or something where if somebody wanted to get in touch with you so they could,
okay, my whole research, Georgia, is to provide information for other people to create their own family
trees. Yeah.
I can go to the village right now, and believe me, I've gone to the villages, and in the beginning they will not trust me. I had a hard time, getting people to trust me. Right now, I go to the village. Not only they trust me, but they offer information, as Dimitris said earlier. They offer information to me. Before they would not let me take their picture. Now they come in with envelopes full of pictures that I can take pictures of them and return them. But they come and ask me to build their family tree, and I can build a family tree going back to 1800, provided they give me some information. I'm lucky, Georgia. I'm lucky because you guys are talking about information starting in 1900, and I'm talking about information starting in 1700.
Listen, I know. I've been listening to you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
It is
Yeah,
amazing.
but again, the Archbishop of the churches in Lefkas gave an order, and the order was for 1695 that all the churches that they belong to the metropolis, they had to keep records of the marriages, the deaths, and the deaths and the marriages of all the separate each church. I have records that they start in 1775, 3 different churches, 3 different books of records. They start in 1775. The records that I have, they start from 1775. They go up to 1980. But just the baptism records, the baptism books. I should not say records. The baptism books that I have scanned, there are 35 from 1770. Just the baptism.
Wow.
When I say scanned, I mean either scanned it really, or I took pictures of them, and then through Photoshop I'm able to work them and but then between the baptism records, the marriage records, I have about 25 books from 1800 to 1950. You were talking earlier about the Mitro Arenon. Carol said something earlier. Lefkas was under different occupation for many years. We were under the Ottomans from 1470 to 16 something. We were under the Venetians from 16 something to 17 to the early 17. We were under a lot of different people, but we joined Greece, Lefkas and the Ionian Islands. They joined Greece 1868. So the first time that they voted with the elections in Greece, and there was a need for the electoral lists was 1869 and 1875. The Mitro Arenon was started in 1879, and I don't remember if Carol hit it earlier. You had to be 40 in order to be listed. So these lists that I have, by the way, for the whole island of Lefkas, for all the villages, this list start in 1839.
That's
so
amazing.
I do have all those lists, and I have worked almost all of them. I want to protect. I saw what Carol had.
Yes. Yes, so this has been very interesting. You've done a lot of wonderful work. And I'm glad you're my cousin.
No, but again, Georgia, where do we go from now? And what I like to be able to do is as I said, have a book for every family. I'm collecting pictures. I'm collecting pictures, and believe me, I can do it. I can do it because I have the records from early 1900s. I have the records from late 1700s. I can connect those two with the help of the marriages and the births that I have in between. But with the lists, the electoral lists and the Mitro Arenon, the mail lists, I can do that. But in a Glouvi, in 1766 to 1790, there was a notary that wrote 7 books. Now, those 7 books, as Carol hit it earlier, if you wanna learn how the families lived, if you wanna learn the pain, if you want to learn a lot of the history, that's what you should read, and that's where the real story is. In a will, okay, let's take a will. A will has to have a family, so automatically you get a feeling of the family. You have a family tree. That family tree, you most likely I'll be able to connect it because it is written in 1760, 1770. I can connect them with the births that I have for those particular years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. You've done a great job.
Yeah, let me say something about the will. Okay, the wills to begin with, it is a misleading that okay. Let me rephrase it. In the wills is almost the first time that you see a female referred to. There are many reasons, and one of the reasons is that if there is a will, the husband writes his own will, the wife writes her own will, because the dowry, the properties that she got from her husband belong to her.
Oh, very interesting.
Very, very interesting. They belong
Very
to her. That's why when you read dowry agreements, prikosifona, the husband and the wife are there because the husband cannot give to the girl something that belongs to his wife. She has to be there to sign that she's
women's rights started with you guys right back then, right? That's what.
Right on.
Okay. I think we need to move on to Chris. So Chris, unmute your thing. There we go. Hi. So you have been working for quite a while. I understand you've got 65,000 people in your tree. Tell us what is going on.
So thank you for allowing me to participate and share my journey on creating.
No, I can't wait to hear it.
Family tree. I really appreciate it. So I was born in a village called Prosimni, also known as Berbati in Arbolida, which is, as far as I'm concerned, it's considered the center of the universe. I just have to say that. But another thing that I should bring up to you, George and Carol, is, and it's very important, I talked about my village being Prosimni, but also called Berbati. So one of the things that you might want to consider is creating a link, and that is available, of the names of the villages and how they have changed in the past couple hundred years. I think that would be very helpful to everyone. So getting back to me, I initially started creating the Zervas family tree back, it started in 1982. Typically when there's a funeral, wedding, or something like that, everybody gets together and then they talk about old times and things like that. So in this particular case,
wait a minute, go back 1982. You started? How many? That's a long time ago. Okay.
It was a long time, but I took a break for quite a few years. But okay. So it was my grandfather's funeral in Bellingham, Washington, and there were a number of people there the night before. And so the conversations were, again, family members and things like that. So I decided to put everything in writing. There was my mother, my aunt and uncle George and Dimitris Papasotiriou, but there was my aunt that lived in Portland, Oregon. Her name was Helen Sotiriou Goritsas. She was at that time, she was like in the mid 80s. She was extremely sharp. And she ended up, she lived until the ripe age of 102.
Wow.
That night, I was able to document the Zerva side of the family that went back to literally around 1810, 1815. So not only that, but all the kids, their spouses, their kids, and so on and so on. So basically, up until 1982, I had the entire Zerva side of the family. The other
Wow.
thing that I tried to do there and I was capturing was the nicknames of each individual. And that became very important later on as my tree expanded to include the entire village. Because there were individuals that had exactly the same name. Just like me, Christos Anastasios Zervas, Christam Zervas, there were like 2 or 3 with the same name, but I kept finding the same situation again and again. So to help me out to figure out who was who in this whole zoo in the village, I created this matrix, which was the last names of the village, and then all the associated nicknames by each last name. So that helped a lot because not only the ages, but some of them were 100 years apart. So nicknames really came out to be extremely helpful as part of my project. The other thing that I utilized as part of this effort was all kinds of public records that I could get access to. The voter registration records of 1844, 65, 75, 1983. Again, what I did with these records, I converted them into Excel spreadsheets, and then I started sorting them differently to figure out who was who. And, you know, earlier, Georgia, you mentioned, you know, and Carol again, the age when the individuals were born, they're never the same from one record to the next. So you had to so I used that sorting method in order to figure out who the individual actually was. The other thing that I used were some of the court records that I was able to find from Nafplion and Argos. So I was able to get some information about individuals, about different cases and things like that I had access to. Then there were some school records, but most of them started like from the 1920s, which listed the children, but also the parents and the maiden names of the mother, for example. So that really was pretty helpful. Although limited, it really helped a lot. Then there were the birth records, death records, and wedding records from the church. The problem there that I ran into, there were a lot of books from that had information starting from around, I think it was 1906 in the village. When I tried to open the very first book, I didn't want to touch it because it was ready to crumble. As you can imagine, a very old book. It's been through heat, cold weather, humidity, dryness, and all that kind of stuff. So I really didn't want to touch these books and destroy them. So the other thing that I did, which helped me a lot, and Georgia, you mentioned this earlier, and that is personal interviews. So over the years, I have spent thousands of hours interviewing different people. And the reason for that is you get to know, you get a lot of details, you get stories about the individuals. And I take that information, the stories, and I also include them in the notes in my family tree. So in addition to just the individual, when they were born and all that kind of stuff, who their parents were and all that, in a lot of cases, there's a little history about the individuals.
It's interesting because across all of us, all of you too, to presenting here, the stories are the most important. If all we have is just like dates and names, it's nothing. It's the stories that tie it all together and the interviews that all of you have done. That's really a common thread.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The other thing that because some of the records were not available, especially with the males, I would talk to them and they say, oh, and so I would ask them, okay, so when did you go to the army? And they said, oh, I went such and such time. And there was so on and so on and so on. They would identify everybody in the village that they were in the same group that went. So that gave me an indication also, since I didn't have birth records, I could use that with a fairly good accuracy when these guys were born. The other thing with these individuals, they told me stories about, oh yeah, they had 3 other kids, but one died such and such time, they were young and all this. So I was able to get that kind of information as part of the interviews. And then, you know, sometimes you kind of question, okay, why does this kid has the same name as their father or their mother? And so, you know, there were a lot of wars, people died while the spouse, let's say the male died, the husband died, the spouse had a child that wasn't baptized, or she was pregnant when he went off to war. So the tradition was, as you can imagine, they took their father's name if it was a male. So because typically you don't see that very often, but that was one of the reasons for some of the situations. A lot of stories, which was great. The other thing was transportation was not very good, obviously. There were no roads, just some paths primarily between the villages there. And a lot of the villages where I came from, they're all within 3 to 8 or 9 miles apart, very, very close to each other. So there were in situations where some of the people would marry in another village. They went as gabros or nifi, as it's called, bride or groom. And so I try to capture that information. The other thing that I noticed, once there was a single marriage, there were a whole bunch of them, probably proxenia, if you guys have heard the term, where, oh, do I have a bride for you, or do I have a husband for you, and stuff. So there was a lot of that. So that led me to start collecting information about the other villages around there. Then I started doing, so this whole time, all the information that I was putting together was in paper. And then I joined the 21st century, and then I started that and got into, I was looking for a particular software, and Ancestry was the one that I came up with, the Ancestry family tree maker. And so I started inputting all this data in there. Next project was my wife's side of the family, and they're from Gravia and Lidoriki and Fokida, but also my father-in-law's stepfather was from a village outside of Tripoli called Paleochorion. Paleochorion was kind of interesting because it was a very large village, yet it was up in the hills, and then all of a sudden, probably 75% of the people immigrated to the States primarily. And they all immigrated, which was very fortunate, around Chicago, Spokane, Washington, and Seattle, Washington. So I was able to get a book that was written in the 1940s from the Paleochorion community in Chicago that had a lot of information. So start extracting information and populating.
That's great.
And then obviously the ancestry records, but I was able to get access to their male records, birth records, going back to the 1830. So that was incorporated into a spreadsheet. I started populating more information, the family tree and all that kind of stuff. So I'm giving you some examples of the kind of information and how I access that information. There was another village where my dad's sister was married, and it's right next to Nafplion called Midea or Gerbisi. And so a lot of information from my uncle about his family, but there were a whole bunch of other people from my village that had married there or back and forth. So I probably had about 30% to 40% of the people in my tree. And then I got to meet this individual. His name was Christos Konstas. He's an attorney in Athens. And at the time, he had done tremendous amount of research, and he was in the process of writing a book. So we coordinated. I shared information. He shared a lot of information. And then sure enough, he published his book. I bought his book, populated my family tree even further and got it pretty close to 100%. And at the same time, bought a whole bunch of his books and gave them to all kinds of relatives here in Seattle, in Portland, in LA, and in other areas, just so they know about their families and stuff like that, because I was able to get in touch with them. Similarly, there are a lot of books that have been written with information about specific villages. Now, I was interested primarily in the area around my village in Arbolida and Corinthia. So anytime I find any kind of book written about those villages, I buy them and then read them and extract information and then populate my tree. There's another village called Stefani in Corinthia, which is very close because we're right at the border between Arbolida and Corinthia. And again, a lot of marriages back and forth from our village. So I was able to identify, I was given a contact name. Her name is Patricia Vanderwell. So Vanderwell.
Very Greek. Yeah.
So she lives there, but now lives in Thessaloniki, and she has put an incredible family tree for the entire village. So she was missing information from my village, so-and-so Katina, but she was from Berbati, for example, that kind of stuff. So we coordinated. I shared my tree with her. She shared the tree that she had put together. So again, a lot of information that was extracted there and populated into my tree. So next, in my bio, I stated that I'm part of this group here in the Seattle area called the Greeks in Washington.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. So this was an effort that was initiated by John and Joanne Nikon. And part of their effort was to go around to individuals here in the state of Washington and interview them and literally create a miniature family tree about the individuals, both the spouse and both spouses, but also their kids, where they came from, siblings, when they came over here. And so they would publish these write-ups, which are now, they're all posted in the Greeks in Washington website, and I'm also a board member now as part of that. But the other thing in these write-ups is all these individuals will share their pictures, and they're there. But also John and Joanne, the other great thing that they did is they videotaped these interviews, this hour-long.
They're available online, aren't they? They're available on the website.
That's exactly right. And so tremendous amount of information. So guess what? Because there are a lot of relatives of mine that came to the state of Washington and Oregon and Vancouver, a lot of commonalities. So I was able to take all those write-ups, extract the information, and populate the tree, because literally it's an extended family and everybody's linked together through marriage or something. The other thing, John was gracious enough to share his tree also, which I was able to extract information. So right now, another project that I'm doing right now, there's another village called Limnes, which is, less than 3 kilometers away from ours. So I had, again, a lot of marriages back and forth. I had information from the census record, actually the voter registration records, but also I was able to get, Carol, you mentioned, similar to a census record. And between that, so this lady, her name is Angeliki Karamanos Frimis, She's from Limnes, but currently lives in Toronto. Her and I have spent probably, I don't know, 50, 75, 100 hours on the phone the past few months. But she's a wealth of information. She's in her 70s, and I've been able to spend a lot of time with her, and with the data that I had, going back and start linking everybody together. And so, she's great. She's very gracious. I don't want to push her too far, but she says, I'm going to use the Greek term, which means basically, since we're on the dance floor, we might as well finish the dance. Literally. She says, don't stop. I'm more than happy to help you with anything. So,
Oh, that's great. So, what we've learned from everybody so far is that it's all about connections.
Oh, absolutely.
Talking to everybody, interviews, and you can't do everything online. You really have to get out there and connect.
Exactly.
Chris, this has been great. Now, if your whole tree is on Ancestry?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What is the name of it? How do we get to it?
It's Chris Zervas, but it's a very lengthy link. But Chris Zervas is a tree. There's two of them. But yeah. That's
great. Thank you so much.
Can
this
I make
has been very interesting.
I know I'm dragging this on, but I'd like to make, if possible, if I can make a couple points.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So one, I mentioned about the village names and the changes over the years. The other, there's a lot of tools out there. A lot of churches have put on a regular basis anniversary books together.
Right.
And if you look at those, they are a wealth of information, because just like John and Joanne, they're miniature family of the families, including pictures. And like what everybody said, both Tom and Dimitris and Stelios, people are interested in sharing information with you. They really do. And if you encourage them and provide them information with what you have, which I try to do, they're more than happy. It's not uncommon on a weekly basis, many times during the week, to get notes from individuals. Can you tell me this? Can you tell me that?
Yeah.
And all that. But thanks for allowing me to share my journey. I'd be more than happy to help anyone out there with information. My email is obviously the center of the universe, which is called Berbati. So it's berbati@yahoo.com. But I'm also on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to work with you, but also be prepared that I'm going to ask a lot of questions at the same time. So
Good for you. Thank you very much. That was great. So now, Carol, tell us what you've been up to.
Okay, well, we are past 10 o'clock, so I'm going to keep this really,
we were slow going, but okay, go on.
That's okay. I will not take too much time, but unlike my fellow researchers here, I feel like the Lone Ranger. I am doing this myself. It started, I was born in Brooklyn. My extended family was in Brooklyn. I didn't even speak English till I was 5 years old. And we moved from Brooklyn into a cute little community in New Jersey where nobody spoke Greek. So leaving that hub of family, and then from New Jersey, we moved to Maryland. And I was isolated from all the people, my cousins, my grandparents, everybody. So as my children came along, I wanted them to I wanted to tell them who their family was and capture that heritage for them. So I started like everybody else, letters and asking questions and things. But it wasn't really until about the early 1980s that I was able, after I raised my kids, that I really had the time to jump in and start working. And of course, there was nothing online then. So it was just the slow snail mail stuff. But I've been very blessed in the last several years to have had opportunities every summer to go to Greece. Gregory, bless him, took me for the first time for a real research trip in 2014. I had been there before, but that was my real research trip in 2014. And all it took was walking into the metropolis of Sparta and opening these books that everybody here has talked about and seeing my great-grandparents' marriage, and that was it. I was hooked. And the bug just hit me to the point where it became a passion for me. So every summer I go to Sparta and I work. I digitize records there. And when I'm not working, I'm either in the cemetery taking pictures of tombstones, or I'm in the archive office, or I'm at the CAP office, or I'm in the library, I'm somewhere. So over the last 6 or 7 years, I've gotten just about every extant record that exists for Ios Ioannis, my village right outside of Sparta. The school records, all the church books, the records we talked about earlier. And from there, I started, as I said earlier, when I was giving my presentation, you start with the mail registers, you start with the voting list, you get a skeleton, and then you just start adding those people as they come. So I spend hours every day, literally hours every day, extracting information from the records that I've gotten in Sparta. Greg has a wonderful collection now of some kind of unusual records on his website, the parish voter list, parish census list. So when I said earlier that there's stuff out there, there really, really is. It's just hidden. Unlike my fellow researchers here, I don't have a buddy. I don't have people that are that I can go to or who can help me. I haven't built these networks, but I do have cousins in Ioannis, and it's a joy to be with them. And what I love about it is they love it when I visit. And I have dinner with them in the evenings, and they say, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And I say, well, I'm going to go to the archives. And they'll go, wonderful, come home and tell us what you found. And so it just
They don't
cracks
think
me
you're
up.
crazy, huh?
Yeah, they tell me I'm crazy. They call me their crazy American cousin. So all of my work and all of my research, I said to Georgia, as she mentioned earlier, we need to combine our trees. Nobody, unlike some of you that have these village histories or even just a pamphlet, we have dipota, we have nothing from Ioannis. And it breaks my heart. I go to the village, I go to the Sparta library, and there's a whole room with shelves and shelves of village books, and there's none for my village. So I said to Georgia, we need to do something about this. So I've now created a website really quick. If I can do this, I'm going to share my screen and show you, hopefully this will come up, show you this website that I've built for Ios Ioannis or Ioannis. It is, we're going to put photos, stories, village history, and family trees up on this site. And by doing that, what my hope is that this will attract people who will find this a site on a Google search and say, oh, Ioannis, wait a minute, I have family from there, or I know somebody from there. And that I can begin, Georgia and I can begin to build a network using this particular website. So just very quickly, you can see across the top, actually, let me go down a little bit. You can see the three main parts of the website, which are, as I said, the online trees. And when we go into this section here, we talk a lot. I have a list of surnames that I've put together from all the records, and down here are the trees. So you can click on any of these trees here, and it'll take you right to those particular, to that tree, wherever it may be, on Ancestry or MyHeritage or wherever. For the stories and photos section here, this is where we're going to have little stories and tidbits about the village. So what I have here, I've just started posting pictures that I've taken during my trips to Ioannis. These are all my photos. And just a little bit underneath each of these about what it is. Here's a war memorial we talked about earlier. So I have the names transcribed there. Another one with the names transcribed. And so this way, people who don't know what the village looks like, they've never been there, have the opportunity at least to see a little bit about the village. And then, of course, the Village Families tab. And this is where we're hoping to capture. Boy, Tom, I can't believe you have so many hundreds and hundreds of photos. I would love to populate this with hundreds of photos from people from Ioannis. But starting here, just with my family and George's family, and a little bit, again, we can write a little bit underneath it so that people, this is a friend of ours who also has family from Ioannis. His name is Thomas Kostakos, or Mikey's. He sent me this picture. I'm thrilled. So we have his family, George's grandparents and family. So basically, my dream with this website is to build a connection from people all over the world who have roots in the village. It's been a dream of mine, and thanks to Georgia and her encouragement and having a buddy to work with, I feel like it's becoming a reality. So thank you so much for this opportunity to talk a little bit about this. I envy you guys. I love all of you. I love what you're doing. And I think the thing that we all have in common is that we have this driving passion to just get this stuff documented, get these names extracted, put them in some type of a format. And, you know, it's not just for us. I mean, at this point, Chris and Tom and Dimitris and Stelios, they know who their family are. I know who my family is. I'm not just doing this for me. We are all doing this for you. We are doing this for everybody else out there to try to give them a leg up and a little assistance to get started and a place that they can go to at least try to get some support and some encouragement and some tips on how they can find their families. I just want to close by just saying that I'm really proud of Greg for all the work he's done on Greek ancestry, but he now is going to talk on Sunday at the closing session about a brand new initiative called the Village History Project Initiative that's going to be sponsored by Greek Ancestry. And he will give you all the details, but that initiative came about as a result of putting this conference together and talking with these wonderful people who are dedicating the best years of their life to documenting their families and reconstructing their villages. And what Greg is hoping to do is to have a central place where all of us and all of you out there, if you're working on a village project, you just send the name of your village, your email address. If you have an online link like Chris, we're going to tap him right away and get his ancestry tree. And it's going to be put on the Greek Ancestry website so that there's a place that people can go to find a connection. Thanks, Georgia.
No, thank you, Carol. And thanks to everybody. This was a wonderful session. I know we ran a little late, but it was important information. That's why I'm last in the day. Okay, so, all right, everybody, join us again tomorrow. We are going to have, let me read the schedule here. The 1821 Revolution as experienced by your ancestors with Professor Beaton. We have Yanis Mikalakakos. I didn't say that right, Carol.
Mihalakakos.
Family life, customs, and economy. It's too late, okay? Then at the end of the day, we have Professor Alexander Kitroff, Professor Ganda von Steen, and Gregory Contros talking about early migrations, settlement in a new land, and some adoption information. So, see you guys tomorrow. Everybody have a good night or good morning.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.